I think young people in Singapore are a bit more cautious about their finances and spending, maybe because of information overload, but also I think there's this anxiety that, there's not enough for a rainy day and things are getting too expensive.
Welcome to Singapore Unpacked, a podcast series by the Institute of Policy Studies, Singapore. I'm your host, Liang Kaixin, Associate Director and also a former journalist. Today's episode is about avocado toast. I'm kidding. But we are going to talk about buy now, pay later and also young people's financing behaviours. Are young Singaporeans, Millennials and Gen Zs truly reckless with their money, or are we just judging them through outdated stereotypes? We have Dr Teo Kay Key, Research Fellow at the IPS Social Lab, and also He Ruiming, co-founder of the Woke Salaryman and Instagram page focusing on personal finance using webcomics. Welcome to the show today.
Hi, Kaixin.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Kay Key, you are one of the researchers of the IPS working paper on not quite impulsive spenders, key findings on financing behaviours among younger Singaporeans, right? So can you tell us more about what did the survey found on young people's use of buy now, pay later?
So the title we purposely put not quite impulsive spenders because that's exactly what we found. They have certain habits still that show some impulsiveness, but they are also pretty, meticulous in planning finances or actually looking at their current financial health, and that includes using buy now, pay later schemes. So a majority of the respondents do use buy now, pay later schemes, but the way we worded our question was really to ask them whether they had used any of these plans before. So it's more of a test on whether people actually have done it before, but that was not an indication of how many times they used it.
So do you find that a lot of them used it a lot or even like overspend?
So we did not ask frequency, but then when we asked them for reasons why they used the scheme, the top two reasons were for convenience and to manage their spending. So these were quite interesting to us because actually it sort of does not gel with the stereotype where you say that they are impulsive spenders, then they are only using these schemes because they are attracted by all the points and whatnot. So it's really more of a from a more practical perspective where they are going to try to use the scheme, and because we didn't check how many times, right? So it could be that they use one time and then they stop because there's no more rebates or discounts
Or
available.
promotion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ruiming, going to you, right? Because we've seen your Instagram pages sort of like dissuading young people to use buy now, pay later schemes, right? So what's the rationale for that?
Yeah, I think overall, strictly there's nothing wrong with buy now, pay later. But I think it's more of like who buy now, pay later targets. And often it's the people who are, they say like underserved by, let's say, credit cards or banks. Because, for credit cards, there's like a minimum salary of 30K a year, if I'm not wrong, right? But for BNPL, there's no such thing. So actually, it removes the guardrails that credit cards have. And actually, I think we made the argument that people in this group, are actually more financially vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So, they, by using buy now, pay later, like it kind of creates like a unhealthy consumption pattern, right? You kind of normalize taking on debt or normalize buying on stuff that you might not already have. Of course, this is not to say that like the whole of Gen Z, or millennials, like they overspend, but it's just like it's kind of like a gateway drug to overspending.
Okay, so, but I mean, be honest, have you ever like BNPL or anything?
Oh, I've never, because in general, my own principles, I only take like a loan if it's for like housing or education. So if anything else, I'll just fund it on my own purposes.
You don't even use a credit card?
So I use a credit card, right? But that is not loan, right? Because you pay it back at the end of every month. You don't make minimum payments.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about Kay Key?
I've never used a BNPL scheme because it sometimes requires you to download a new app, which is quite a big hassle already.
Okay. So, I mean, we also found from some recent surveys also that showed that more than 70% of Gen Z people have used BNPL compared to the older generations, right? Like millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. So I think a lot of people are saying that they are targeting students and graduates with annual incomes under $30,000. So Kiki, do you see that in your survey also?
Actually, we did find that people who use the BNPL scheme, not say there's no one from the higher income group, but definitely the lower income also use it, and that's definitely because there's no so to say salary requirement for using BNPL. And there was also a finding where we saw that actually people did indicate that using the BNPL scheme actually made them spend on things that they usually wouldn't. So that would probably be one warning sign in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think BNPL exists like in a slightly weird space. For example, if your income is higher, then why not you just use your credit card, right? You might earn like miles or points while you're at it. I mean, BNPL, I think they do have deals, but it's often not as good as credit card deals, which, also the ones that are offering the credit card deals, they are like banks, right? So they are a lot more trustable than like these like new upstarts from BNPL. I think like during COVID, back then when interest rates were low, like around the world, I think that was probably when BNPL was at its hottest, right? But I think recently after interest rates increased around the world, I think those companies are starting to like struggle with financing and giving out like free money like they did during COVID era.
Yeah, I agree with Ruiming because I remember I was at Sephora like paying for makeup, and then like there's this sales girl who came over and tell me that actually if you pay with BNPL, right, I can give you like some discount or something and all that. But then I was thinking like, I'm only buying like something which is like $30. Why do I need to split it into like 4 installments to pay for it? I mean, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But I guess if it's
exactly
more
my
expensive, then maybe I'll consider. You also had this experience?
Yeah, exactly at Sephora where
Oh shit, we all went to Sephora.
she started telling me about discounts before telling me I had to go and sign up for another new app and have a new account. So once she told me that, then I was like, okay, no, thank you.
I'm also curious about like the sustainability of like the BNPL business. Like if they're targeting people who might be financially vulnerable, in the long term they may not be able to pay back also. So that doesn't make business sense to me, at least.
But I think the interest rate is much higher also, right, compared to normal credit cards and all.
But I mean, so no, I don't think the interest rate is much higher. I think like after the MAS regulations, they kind of like made it not so. Can I say jialat on this podcast? not so
Sure.
jialat, right?
Go ahead.
But so many of the people that they target might not have the ability to pay back, hence like defeating the purpose. Even if interest rates are high, if you can't pay back, how can that be a sustainable model?
So I think you mentioned about that, right? We also saw that in Singapore there was a code of conduct, I think formalized in November 2023 with measures to guard against consumer overspending, right? So for example, the minimum age will be 18, and then there's a $2,000 cap on outstanding payments that customers can have with each BNPL provider. Yeah, so I guess there is some kind of like safeguard in the sense.
Yeah, I think compared to other countries, like, especially around ASEAN countries, I think like the BNPL here is really relatively mild already.
Okay. Yeah, interestingly, I just saw one article about Malaysia also. They are coming out with a consumer credit bill because apparently the users for BNPL is actually quite high over there, and they are also trying to curb like overspending and helping to make sure that the young people don't overspend and incur debt. Kiki, going back to you, right? What about the young Singaporeans here? Are they aware of the drawbacks of BNPL?
So actually, majority of our respondents do say that they know about penalties, like they know that there are late payment fees and things like that when it comes to BNPL. But I think we also are quite happy to see that actually most people who go on these schemes actually pay their bills on time, so they actually don't incur all these late payments. And even if people say that they have late payments, on average the amount of money that they need to pay back is much lower compared to, say, credit card bills.
But Kay Key, I was also looking at your paper, right? Actually, I was quite surprised that from the findings that actually 9 in 10 of all these young people, right? I think they're below 35.
35 and below.
35 and below, right? They do not spend all their income each month. Then I was like, wow, all these people are so conscientious and have good saving habits. It's really quite different from what we know of about millennials and Gen Zs, right?
Yes, but hang on, I think it's 39, not 35.
Okay. But okay,
Can I
then
check?
while Kay's checking on her data,
Sorry.
right? What do you think, Ruiming?
Well, I mean, it could also be like some sort of like selection bias also. I mean, if you handled your finances badly, I mean, it'll be less likely you take part in this sort of survey and be honest with your answers as well. So I mean, it's hard to say, right? It's
I
hard
think
to say.
Kay will tell that it's nationally representative.
Yes, it is.
All right. Okay. I mean, it's like sometimes, a financial institute in Singapore might put up like some headline. Like, for example, like, I anyhow say one. Maybe like 8 in 10 in Singaporeans do not have 6 months emergency savings, right? I mean, sometimes they do that to kind of like push an agenda or,
If
get
the
people-
survey is financed by, is paid for by a bank or a financing
But of course,
institution. But
not
this one
saying,
is by IPS.
All right, okay.
Co-funded by CNA.
Which is
Okay.
not a financial institution.
Yeah. But I mean, once again, like the selection bias can happen, right? Because
Or maybe some people may not be truthful.
It's possible that they may not be truthful, but I think if you look at the results, right, they say that they have retirement plans in place, but not all of them follow it religiously. So it's more of like, it's in my head, but whether I actually, pay save up for that is a different thing. Yeah.
I mean, retirement planning, I feel like is quite a vague term, right?
Yes.
You might think like, okay, my plan is to have $1 million when I want to retire.
Okay.
But then like,
How do you get there?
you might, I mean, some people call that a plan.
Okay.
So if you can't take the actions you need to do towards
If it's
that
in my
plan,
head, it's a plan also,
then I
right?
mean,
Yeah, exactly.
plan is like quite a big, broad, vague term also. Yeah. But I mean, it's great. I mean, if it's true, then I'm very pleased, with
You're very
with
pleased.
Singaporeans. Yeah.
But Ruiming, you started the blog about personal finance quite long ago, right? So
2019.
2019, right? So I mean, you must have started with something in mind, right? Do you think that people in Singapore, the young people in Singapore, do they have like good financial literacy and all?
I think back then when we started the blog's called the Woke Salaryman. Yeah.
Yes, I follow it.
Oh, thank you for following. Yeah, I think back then like money was quite a taboo subject. Right?
Serious?
Yeah, I think
Why?
like if you talk about like talk about salary or talk about how much your net worth is with your friends, you kind of like would have been scorned upon or like, hey, why so money minded? Why you so kiamsiap? Right? But I think the conversation has shifted a lot since then. I don't know whether we got a part to play. I like to think that we did, but I think nowadays what younger Singaporeans suffer from is actually information overload.
Okay.
Because I think since COVID, there are like all sorts of financial influencers coming out, and they all say like different things. Some of them are like the trading kind, they tell you like, hey, you can be rich, right? Just by earning 1%.
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the crypto stuff. There's like the trading stuff. Then there's like the financial planner that tries to sell you insurance as an investment product.
Oh, okay.
So,
the
I mean-
investment, what's that called?
I mean,
ILP,
it could be
right?
like whole life plans. It could be like investment policies. But basically plans that are not exactly suitable. I'm not saying all financial advisors, by the way.
Okay, put in the
Yeah, just put in a disclaimer.
yeah.
But I think like young people today probably suffer from information overload.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why you decided to do this to
Oh no, I think
give more information.
okay, first of all, to be fair to my page, we started before the information overload.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it should be other people who are causing the information overload.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kay Key, you say you look at Ruiming's
Yeah.
Instagram account, right? What do you like best?
I think some of the personal stories are quite interesting, like young people who have gone through certain like changes in life. So I remember one talking about getting cancer at a young age, right? And how that changed all the financial planning and life view as well. So things like that actually does put a human side to all the financial planning, because sometimes you just hear like, oh, you need to save up or you need to like do all these investments, and you don't have a clear goal, and sometimes if it derails, then you just get a lot of anxiety. But actually life happens, so things do happen, and then your plans do get derailed in that sense lah.
Yeah, I think I like that you brought it up, because I think one of the things we tried to do with the Woke Salaryman was to add a more human edge to finances. I think before that, personal finance content tend to be like, what you must do with your money every month. You split into 50, 30, 20.
Yeah.
Right? You must use the 4%
Save
rule
for
for
rainy
retirement.
day.
So, I mean, we tried to contextualize all these principles into local stories so that, Singaporeans could have it's more relatable, lah, right? Yeah.
But which content is most popular, and what are some content that young people are requesting from your site?
Sound very arrogant, but I mean we
Sound very arrogant.
but we don't take requests, because I think
You don't
like
take requests at
what
all?
the audience wants isn't always good for them.
Oh, you sound like Lee Kuan Yew. I'm so sorry.
Okay, what the audience always wants isn't good for them, and I think online, like especially when it comes to financial content, the type of content that people want is like how to get rich quick,
Okay.
right? How to 10x your investment returns. I think for us, we just publish based on our principles, but the ones that tend to do well, that fall within our values, usually is stuff like navigating relationships when money is involved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for example, like let's say there's a wedding, right? Then who's gonna pay what? Is it fair? If you get into a relationship with your partner, like how is money split? Stuff like that.
Actually, where do you get your stories from?
I think in the beginning we use like mostly like our own personal experiences.
Okay.
We still do that today, but we also talk to a lot of people like around within our circle. We actively talk to people in different professions as us.
Okay.
But we also stalk like Reddit or Hardware Zone. So
Okay.
one of my favorite things to do is I go on Reddit, I look at the most upvoted comment that I disagree with.
Okay.
Then I write content based on that.
For Reddit, right, there's one subreddit called SG Henry, right? And then it posts like the most absurd things. Because Henry, what does it stand for?
High earner, not rich yet.
Yeah, but the kind of stories they say, they sound very rich.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I also think I will take this with like a pinch of salt, because I think if you are well-adjusted, wealthy individual, you
Why
won't
would
be
you go onto
you won't be
Reddit and
seeking
share all these stories, right?
like validation on Reddit. I mean, it's strange lah. I would take it with a pinch of salt.
Okay. Then coming back to the paper, right?
Yes.
So, actually, other than the fact that they don't spend all their income, right, and then their saving habits are actually quite high also, right? I mean, I saw that 7 in 10 have at least 3 months of expenses as savings. So, I mean, what's your take on this, Keki?
I think young people in Singapore are a bit more cautious about their finances and spending, maybe because of information overload, but also I think there's this anxiety that there's not enough for a rainy day, and things are getting too expensive, so they cannot spend enough that much, or they need more in hand to ensure that they can spend for those unexpected circumstances. So that's why I think we see that kind of numbers in our results.
But it's very surprising, like, because in like China or Taiwan or East Asian countries, we hear a lot about 月光族, right? So youngsters who spend everything and not save, right? But Ruiming, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think the less chance a youth feels they have in today's society, the less likely they are to save. Because the thinking will be like, wow, I cannot buy a house for my whole life anyway. Then what's the point of saving up? I might as well spend it all today. I think you notice this in like a lot of East Asian societies. Korea and China.
Actually, in US and Europe also, right?
Oh, okay. Nice to know that it doesn't discriminate based on geography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in Singapore, like young people probably still feel like, that they still have a chance to.
It's not so bad.
Yeah, it's not
right?
so bad. I mean, things are definitely a lot harder, before the pandemic. But I think the general sense that, they do trust that in the long term, things will get better, and hence they are saving. Because if things won't get better, then you save for what, right? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, actually they still have aspirations to like buy house, get married, have kids, and these are all huge expenses, right? And we do see that most people say that it will eventually be affordable in a sense, like they will be able to buy it eventually. So there's still this hope there for the young people.
Yeah, I think when you look at, for example, if you use housing as a benchmark, I think if you compare Singapore's HDB housing on like a global scale, right? It's high now, historically high, it's high to Singaporeans, but still on a global scale, I believe like the median income to median house ratio is still like maybe 5 or less. But there are cities like, let's say like Hong Kong, Taipei, where it's above 10. And I think I was looking at like maybe Hanoi or in Vietnam, it's like 30 times the annual income. And this is like if you put your entire salary into the house, you take 30 years to pay it off. So I think it's very different. I mean, if you look at Singapore's relatively low number, it kind of reflects that.
I must say that this episode is not sponsored by HDB.
It isn't. I mean, of course, there are problems about HDB we can talk about another time, but yeah, not this podcast.
Yeah, but actually, in your paper also, right, it did say that a lot of young people are actually saving towards buying a house, right?
Yes.
And also, mainly, I think they think that they will be able to get there one day or in the near future, right?
Yeah, they will be able to afford at least HDB, because we asked about HDB and condo. So of course, the percentage of people thinking they can afford a HDB eventually is higher.
Okay. Then moving on to credit cards, right? So I mean, we were talking about BNPL, might as well go to credit cards, right? So do you see like, young people in Singapore using credit cards a lot, or is it more like old people issue? I don't know, because I was looking at some of the research, right? Actually, Singapore users who are in their 40s and 50s actually rack up more credit card debts compared to younger people.
Yeah, it could be because, old
You're
people
not one
spend
of
more
them,
money.
right?
No, it could be because older people spend more money than young people because their salary higher.
Or they have more expenses, right? Like most of those people would have houses, children, elderly folk to take care of. So all these things have, all these aspects have higher expenses content.
Yeah, but I do think like credit cards have become mainstream in Singapore. I think most people, I would expect, will have a credit card. I remember like when I was young, so like 10 years ago, right? Getting a credit card was like, quite a big deal, right?
It's one of the 5 C's, what?
Yeah, I mean credit card, then like back then we were still using debit card.
Oh yeah.
I think now a lot of people will use a credit card because of like the benefits, the points.
Yeah.
I think Singaporeans have like an innate nature to want to like game something also. So if you use a debit card and got no benefits, maybe they feel like you lose out. Yeah, although from a personal finance lens, I think both are okay. It really depends what kind of user you are.
Yeah, I agree. So I think a lot of people use the credit cards really is for convenience or for some other types of positive benefits lah. But obviously some people also say that they also tend to spend more than they usually would if they did not use that credit card. That is probably to be expected. But I think in general, people are not using credit card to really do very crazy expenses, but it's really to ensure that they get some points or some type rebates tied with the bank to get some rebates and cheaper deals.
Yes, I think most people are probably using it responsibly. But of course, every now and then, let's say there's a certain percentage of them who has bad discipline, has like some chronic overspending behavior, and then those get surfaced up and make it to online, to
the outliers,
to surface.
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's always the outliers that get surfaced, right? Like if everyone owed 50k in credit card debt, then it wouldn't be a big hoo-ha if someone said, hey, I have 50k in credit card debt, because it would have been normalized. So yeah, I don't think it has been normalized in Singapore yet. But I mean, in my capacity as people who interact with as someone who interact with people with credit card debt, I mean, I have seen like case studies where people owe like 5 digits of credit card debt.
Serious? How did they do that? Tell us more.
How did they do that? I think often is emotional spending, right? I
Okay.
think there is.
So mainly men or women?
I can't say that. That's like a gender thing that I don't want to go into on this
Okay,
podcast.
okay.
Yeah. But I think I will say like a lot of it is emotional response to kind of like stress or like the feeling of being stuck at work. So I think I have read a case study where someone went on like a shopping spree because they felt frustrated with work after a bad day at work, and eventually like the habit of spending as and when you want eventually like snowballed to a huge amount. So much so that even if the person put whatever savings that they have left at the end of the month towards the credit card payment, it will not put a dent into it. So they had to go to credit counseling in this case.
But then, Kiki, I was looking at your paper again, and then it does say that those aged 21 to 24 are most likely to be short-term spenders, while the older they are more cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you see like your respondents spending a lot or not being able to pay their credit card debts?
Actually, majority don't have that kind of debt, so they do pay their bills on time, at least I think the minimum sum. So in that sense, they are still pretty cautious. What we talk about in terms of short-term spenders is really things like spending on things that make them happy, rather
like
than
what Renovation said, right?
rather than actually spending above their means. It's also interesting because our study also actually found that people have a more negative view towards debt in general. Like they don't think that debt is a good thing, even though they do feel that it's common for things like housing. But again, I think just now Ruiming very nicely touched on one of our findings, which is that the top few reasons for people who say it's okay to get into debt is really housing and education.
Oh, okay. But that makes sense why it's not possible to just pay a lump sum for your education bills
for most people,
and house for most not so rich people.
Yes.
Yeah, but we gave them other examples like luxury goods or holiday or wedding. So the most popular is really the pragmatic ones.
I think in general, our page doesn't advocate for taking loans for anything other than education or housing. If you want to take like a holiday, if you have to take a loan for a holiday, maybe you just can't afford the holiday. Maybe you just keep working. Nowadays there are a lot of advertisement, and then they always say like, take a holiday, you deserve it.
Oh.
But how does the copywriter or the ad knows that you deserve it, right? Maybe you don't deserve a holiday. Maybe you just need to save more money, then you go on a holiday after you save the money. Not, take a loan and then go on holiday.
But interestingly, like nowadays there's a lot of like YouTube videos on like renovation and then people are really spending a lot on renovation and maybe even taking on debt to fund their to beautify their house. But is this part of the survey also? No?
I think we did ask about housing related expenditure, so like big ticket items like furniture lah. So that was the example given, but I think definitely renovation would be very housing related. So it was also one of the higher ranked ones.
That people are willing to take out a loan
for
it.
They think it's justifiable for a loan to be taken.
But it doesn't make sense, what? Because renovation is like,
I think it's kind of like in the grey zone, like it's between housing and discretionary spending, right? Because it is for your house after all, and I think a lot of people, a home is a very emotional purchase. So there's the idea like, can I say on this podcast?
You've already done it.
I already spent how much on the house? What's another insert 10% of the house price gonna stack up, right?
Though actually sometimes the reason for taking a loan may not be that they cannot afford it. It's more of like spreading out the spending,
cash flow management,
right? Or maybe some extra benefits that they get from the bank. Because banks now also offer renovation home loans that have some rebates tied to it. Yeah, so these are also reasons why people say they might take loans lah.
I think taking loans has also been kind of like normalized since like maybe I'm going to go out on a limb and say maybe like the 2010 to 2019 era.
So recent? I mean, it's quite a common thing.
Where interest rates were low, right?
Okay.
Right, interest rates back then, the US wanted to stimulate the economy, so they put the interest rates low worldwide. Then it made sense to borrow large amounts of money. Like that was the game. I think back then people would say like, you should invest your money first instead of paying back your housing loan or education loan, right?
Yeah,
but now
yeah.
like because interest rates have kind of like went up, that script has like flipped a bit. Like now, if it's like 4%, 5%, it's actually a huge increase of monthly repayments. So I think people might be more cautious because of the rising interest rate.
And also the rising cost of living, right?
Yes.
Do you see this issue coming up recently?
I think it's been around for the last 2 years already. I mean, I feel like it's a post-COVID sort of thing. And the truth is, cost of living is a major problem like everywhere around the world. It's probably like I think it's a side effect from what we needed to do to get through COVID. Right, like the government had to I think the US government, right, inject a lot of stimulus, and I think now we're just facing that aftermath.
Yeah, I think I mean from the survey itself, already people say that they can feel effects. They feel affected by cost of living rising. So I think it's a perpetual issue. Even in our other surveys, this issue of cost of living is also something that comes up. So I think Singaporeans in general, or maybe everybody around the world, are very affected by this.
Yeah, and I think it could be like a prolonged issue as well. I mean, if stuff like climate change comes true, what we have is like reduced crop use, like producing less food.
Okay.
You might have like rising energy prices, causing to even more higher prices. So yeah, I think it's probably here to stay for quite a bit, unless there's like massive depopulation, which I don't think so, since people are living longer and longer.
How do you think younger Singaporeans are adapting then? Because I mean, I know that cost of living issues affect everyone, right? But what about the young ones who maybe they just graduated from school and just starting out at work and maybe have not even found a full-time permanent job?
Well, I think some of the strategies that they said that they are using is really to spend less, like spend on the items that they can only afford, or to defer spending on things that they cannot afford right now. So that is probably one of the ways that they are trying to manage, because if you don't have the cash flow, then you really cannot buy all those things unless you resort to things like what we talked about earlier, the BNPL schemes.
Yeah, I think some younger folks also kind of like package like sustainability into it. Like, they might go like thrift shopping instead of buying like brand new stuff. They might kind of like take pride in mending their own stuff. I think that has taken that's a movement somewhere in the US, I believe. Singapore mending, not so. I think not here yet, but who knows? Maybe in a couple of years.
Or like farm to table.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, I think
grow your own veg.
I mean, that one hard lah. Singapore, the 30 to 30 also very, very difficult. But I think when looking for employer, younger people are also very aware of the opportunity cost of staying in a job too long. And if their salary doesn't stagnate, so they see job hopping as a way to kind of like get their salary higher also.
That's not very healthy, right?
Well, but I think it's a natural adaptation to how companies treat their workers also. Because if you can't rise through the ranks in a single company, then I stay for what, right? Why not I just jump? If the company not loyal to me, I don't need to be loyal to the company also. So I think like it takes two hands to clap. And I mean, if employers want to change that, then they should like walk the talk first.
But I think to caveat, because I suspect not everybody would do job hopping just to get a jump in payment in their salaries lah. And probably the practice is not really like I jump every few months. It's maybe like after 1 or 2 years. Yeah. So you get the experience.
I think that's interesting because like back then, so this 10 years ago, when I changed job every 1-2 years, people would call it job hopping then. So it might be job hopping by, let's say, baby boomer standards. But to millennials, it's like, okay, it's a normal thing.
Yeah, just do a minimum 1 year or 2 years and you should be free to go, right?
Exactly. But I think 10 years ago, like that was taboo. People would say, you change jobs so many times. People don't know whether you can be trusted to stay long. But nowadays, no one stays that long in a job.
Not true lah, not true.
Okay, younger folk.
IPS, we have a lot of people who work for many years.
IPS, and let's say certain sectors aside, right? I think, for example, if I were like hiring someone, a young person, and let's say they stay in a job for like a very long time, it's not necessarily like a red flag, but I would inquire, hey, why you stay in this job for so long?
Someone's loyal. Why are you questioning person's loyalty?
It could be that. It could be that.
Okay.
Or the person had no other choices to go. And you always, I mean, if you are really looking for talent, then wouldn't you pick people who have ample opportunity and
Or
choices
more
to go?
varied experiences, is it?
I mean, yeah, that too.
Okay.
I'm not saying if you stay in one job is bad. I'm just saying it's a reason for an inquiry.
Then I'm a boomer because like when I see CVs that the person job hop too much, it really, it's a red flag to me. Especially if it's less than 1 year, like 3 months, 4 months, and then they goes another place.
Yeah, the older you are, the less your tolerance. I'm sure like Gen Z manager next time, 6 months okay lah. But I mean, as a millennial boss myself, I think 1 to 2 years is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kiki, what do you observe from this?
I mean, I don't have exact numbers on job hopping, but then what I feel is that it really depends on the industry, because if the industry is so to say standardized 1 or 2 year contracts or a few months employment contracts, then obviously that would be the norm when you see the person's CV, right? Or like when they are still very young and have not gotten a full-time job yet ever. So that is something to also take into consideration. But then if you see like someone who has maybe 10 years full of experience and they job hop every 3-4 months, then that's a red flag. That's definitely a red flag.
That's true, because like the younger you are, right? Like I mean, the more junior you are, the more likely you are to job hop, because a lot of projects you take do not take long-term vision.
Okay.
But once you enter, like let's say senior management, then if you stay 1 year, how will you get anything done, right? You work on like a long or mid to long term, like 5 to 10 years kind of project. Yeah, but anyway, are we like diverting the conversation too much to job hopping?
It's okay. I think we take a very conversational approach for our podcast, and we just go wherever it goes.
I'm using my empathy to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah, but actually for this, right, I think it's quite important also for employers to then take care of their existing employees, right? To give them like reasonable increments, so that they don't feel like it's better that they job hop in order to get a pay raise instead of staying put in the company, right? And also, of course, if the company can give the young employee like few more opportunities to explore different job scopes and all that, then I guess then it will encourage the young person to stay on for a bit longer, right? All in all, right, so because we did sort of like explore how young people are saving, are spending, and how they use BNPL and credit, right? So as I think we are all millennials, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I mean, if there's one tip that you can give to Gen Zs or even Gen Alphas, what tip would you give for their personal finance?
For me, it would be kind of like be able to think for yourself. So I'll give you an example. Like I recently met a younger friend who bought this, this pop mart thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Labubu.
I mean, I didn't want to say the L word, right? But now I've said it.
I did
Okay,
for you.
did. Yeah, but she bought it because everyone had it. So I asked her, do you actually like it? I don't really like it.
How much was it?
I never asked her. But I mean, like, I know
You do not care lah, right?
it's quite a big chunk. I mean, I don't really care how much the Labubu is, whatever. Maybe she buy black market expensive, $500. I don't know. Maybe $200. I'm not sure. But the point was that she bought something not because she liked it. She
It
bought
was
it.
more like peer pressure, right?
She bought it to conform to society. And I think like even though we make fun of Labubu, I think even grown-ups fall prey to Labubus of their own. I think for a lot of millennials now, it's snowboarding in Niseko. Like every mother son or father-daughter, right, is snowboarding in Niseko right now. It's
Are you
become
serious?
normalized.
I think it's just your social circle.
Okay, a lot lah.
Henry.
Let's just say a lot, yeah.
Oh, is it?
No, Henry's.
Yeah. So
right.
I feel like if you are able to resist whatever the Labubu is of your time, you will be able to cut down on spending a lot. So if you do want to, it's okay to spend money, but if you spend money, make sure it's something that you like, not because you want to conform to other people. I think a lot of people waste money when it comes to that. Whether is it like a Labubu, a snowboarding holiday, a car, a condo, expensive enrichment class for your kid. I think like they fall in the same category of spending money to attain some sort of like validation or approval.
Or status?
Yeah.
Okay. Keki?
I think one main thing probably is spend within your means, because once you get into that, I think it's very hard to get out, because it's like a bottomless pit with all the interest rates rolling like month on month, year on year. So just spend within your means, I think would be the advice I would give.
Okay.
Oh, I got one more to add.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, you should not abuse the term money can earn back on. Right, because whenever someone's going to make a bad decision, say, money can earn back on. But then if you look at the job market now quite rough lah. Then like you must ask yourself, can money truly be earned back on? Right? If you let's say you want to spend on, let's say something meaningful, yeah, money can earn back. But if you want to justify like a purchase that doesn't make sense, yeah, then that is a very dangerous term that often leads down a slippery slope.
Okay, so thank you, Ruiming. Thank you, Kay Key, for this episode of Singapore Unpacked. If you enjoyed this episode, do follow or subscribe to the show, leave a rating, or share it with someone who cares about Singapore's future as much as you do. We want this podcast to spark conversation, so if there's a policy issue you'd like us to explore or a guest you recommend, reach out to us on IPSSG or visit our website, ipscommons.sg. Thank you all for listening in. See you on the next episode of Singapore Unpacked.